Good evening and welcome to the July monthly meeting of the Human Trafficking Task Force of Southern Colorado. My name is Joanne O'Neill and I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors for the Human Trafficking Task Force. And it's an honor to be part of the board and to be such a big part of ending modern day slavery. And I would say a big part because here in Colorado, we were like the first task force when Betty Edwards started us, very small. Online, please stay muted and use the chat box if you have any questions for our speaker. I'm thankful to all of those of you who are taking part in this meeting tonight in person. I believe this will be, we have talked about the last time, we'll do this by Zoom. So if you're on Zoom this evening, please come and join us in person next month. So for those of you who are new to our organization, and how many people have not been here before? Just, okay, 3, okay, awesome. So we're a grassroots nonprofit organization. We've been active in the community, which almost 15 years actually. And we do, everything we do stems from the passion and the drive of our board members. Our vision is to end modern day slavery. Our mission is to be involved in preventing labor and sex trafficking through awareness and advocacy, intervening in the human trafficking cycle through collaboration with individuals, agencies, and organizations, and connecting those impacted by modern day slavery to restorative services. And what we do monthly meetings, we're active in the community, we do presentations, we have our annual symposium, we have the diversion program, and we provide survivor support. Tonight, I'd like to introduce our speaker. You've known Dr. Jennisue Jessen, comes here most days. Thank you. Here. There we go. Thank you. So I needed my producer over there. Dr. Jennisue has more than 25 years experience in the field of human trafficking. She knows the depths of trauma a body can endure. She was sold into sex trade at the age of 4 by her grandfather, but God provided for her rescue and escape after a failed suicide attempt at age 17. Jennisue holds a PhD in educational leadership and is the founder and CEO of Compass 31, an international counter-trafficking NGO. Jennisue is also the creator of Echoes of Eden Collective, a social enterprise that funds her charitable work through a vegan, now this one's going to get artisanal, eco-friendly skincare line. On January 5th, 2021, Jennisue was appointed by President Trump to serve on the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking, where she utilizes her experience to help inform federal counter-trafficking policy. Please welcome Dr. Jennisue Jessen.
Okay, so this is me, Dr. Jennisue. I'm supposed to be here in front of the camera. This is so weird for me. Usually when I speak, I'm like out front and I use my hands. I'm a storyteller at heart. I am a member of the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking, a thought leader, global educator, founder of my own nonprofit. We have restoration programs in Thailand, Bangladesh, the Middle East. By God's grace, we intend to open Greece and Canada in 2022. I'm an author and just in December celebrated completing my PhD in educational leadership. So I'm super excited to be here with you tonight. So that's where I am now, but that is not where I started. In fact, I started disillusioned and disappointed, waking up with a bloody knife still in my hand after a failed suicide attempt. After 13 years of exploitation, my attempt to escape through suicide had failed. And later that afternoon, I had an appointment at a Planned Parenthood clinic and found out that I was pregnant. And I often say that God used sin to send a son that saved my life. I won't get preachy, but part of my journey has been how God had intervened in my circumstances. And, but even that is not where my story began. My story began at the age of 4 with my grandfather, who was a wicked bad guy with a perverse love for little girls. And he started selling me to other men for sex at the age of 4. What followed the next 13 years was all the drama and trauma that you might imagine associated with rape for profit. And so we don't need to go into the bloody details of that. It wouldn't serve you, it wouldn't serve me. But that's what I looked like at the age of 4, the first time I was sold. There are some important things that I would like to highlight about my story because it's the point that I would like to bring forward tonight. And we hear the slogan quite a bit, silence is violence. I don't know how you feel about that in the political spectrum. But over the course of my 13 years of exploitation, there were a lot of people that knew and were complicit in my exploitation because they refused to intervene, or were complicit in different ways. It starts with my parents, who did not know, but my dad was an alcoholic and my mom was addicted to my dad. And when the house was in crisis, they, believing they were doing the very best thing, sent me to live with my grandparents. And my grandparents were 3 hours away, which provided a plenty of a buffer and access for my grandfather to carry out his plans. Next, my grandmother knew what was happening, and there were several encounters that she confronted me with how important it was to keep my mouth shut. And my grandparents, I was not exploited because of drugs or poverty, some of kind of the stereotypes we hold on to. My grandfather was all about power, and my grandparents were the wealthy upper echelon in their small town community. And that is how my grandfather maintained his control, was through my exploitation and then blackmailing the perpetrators with evidence, with photos and videos of my exploitation. In first grade, I had a teacher who noticed my discomfort in class and on the playground, and she discovered that I had the first signs of a sexually transmitted disease. So took me to a school nurse who confirmed that that was the case, but the exploitation continued. At age 9, I survived an encounter that perhaps I shouldn't have survived, and it put me in a catatonic state for several days. And my mom called to talk to me, which was kind of the normal status quo when I was at my grandparents', called to talk to me and I didn't talk. So she drove the 3 hours to pick me up, and I didn't talk for several days. And I would just sit and rock and stare and not engage at all with the world around me. But our next door neighbor was a pediatrician. I called him Grandpa Dennis. He was a really good guy, one of the few good guys that I knew as a child. And so my mom traipsed me across the yard, took me to Grandpa Dennis, sat me on their kitchen table. Grandpa Dennis, this pediatrician, checked me out a bit and said, I don't know what happened. I don't know what's wrong, but if she doesn't snap out of it in a few days, we'll put her in the hospital. Again, an opportunity for a doctor to see and know and intervene and not. My godfather was a state patrolman and knew that I had suicidal tendencies, self-harm, that I was anorexic, knew about the drama in the household with the alcoholism and addictions, didn't intervene. And unfortunately, a pastor was one of my perpetrators. So these are community people that should be able to intervene. They should be aware. Many of them were aware. I mean, when a teacher sees a 6-year-old with a sexually transmitted disease, why? And so that begs the question, what are we afraid of? So this is me, obviously not as a child. This was just in 2020. In December of 2020, I fainted. And when I fainted, I busted my face. I had to have six stitches, pretty substantial black eye there. One of the lingering effects of my trauma as a child is I have extensive scar tissue in my pelvis, and that's resulted in a lot of complications over the years, including 2 pulmonary embolisms, damage to my heart and lungs, 14 miscarriages. But one of the ongoing implications of those health things is that I'm prone to fainting. So if I faint, don't panic. Anyway, this happened in 2020. And day one, I was pretty nervous. Day one, I didn't even leave my house because, I mean, I looked like I had been in a fight, right? Day two, I needed some stuff from the grocery store. Like, okay, I'm going to put on sunglasses. I'm going to go. In the grocery store, I ended up taking off my glasses so I could put on reading glasses and read a label. My arms aren't that long anymore. But I felt self-conscious. And nobody said anything. Well, every single day, I took my 2 dogs to the local dog park. And there were 12 of us that always came between 12 and 2 in the afternoon. And we were on a first name basis, 12 of us. Hey, Joe, what's going on? How's Buster today? We would talk about life and work. And not one of them said anything about this huge black eye and 6 stitches. So I got a little bit more brave. I started, the checkout person at Walmart would make eye contact and say, how's your day? Nobody said anything. It took 3 weeks. Actually, in all of these pictures, I already have my makeup on because I'm that kind of girl. I don't go anywhere without my makeup on. It took 3 weeks for the bruising to go away. And in 3 weeks, church, grocery store, dog park, people I knew, people I didn't know, not a single person asked, are you okay? And if you notice, this is my left side, right? Typical perpetrator, right-handed perpetrator. This is where I would be hit. And not a single person asked, are you okay? So what's the problem? We talk about human trafficking and we make it this really complex, big, scary thing. Like, I don't know what to do and I don't know what to watch for. When in reality, we're just skating through life, numbed out, zoned out, rushing from here to there, doing our tasks, knocking off our to-do list, picking up our kids, going to work, vegging out in front of the TV, unaware of what's happening around us. Fortunately for me, this situation, I just fainted. Like, I was safe. I was okay. But all the people in my community couldn't have known that. And nobody asked. So the greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate action of its members. So what can you do? I think we have overcomplicated the issue of combating human trafficking. The number one thing that we can do to fight it is to be fully present and courageously loving. If I see somebody at Walmart or dinner or wherever at the dog park and they seem to be hurting, I'm super intuitive. So I notice when people are withdrawn, when they're usually not, or when they're sad. And I can go, hey, Sister Roseanne, you look really distracted today. Is there something that's hurting? Is there something, a burden that you're carrying? And I can see it because I'm choosing to be fully present. And I'm choosing to ask hard questions. Listen, there's a lot of things to be afraid of in the world. I can tell you, there's monsters in the dark. There's a lot of things to be afraid of, but being fully present and courageously loving is not one of them. The next thing that we can do is to set a high standard of love and respect within our home and community. Because what we model in our families, for our kids, for our grandkids, for our nieces and nephews, for our family members, what we model is what they come to expect. what was modeled for me was seriously dysfunctional. You know, there was domestic violence, there was addiction, there was certainly the sexual perversion, if you will. Those were the standards that I grew up with. Respect wasn't something I knew. Safety wasn't something I knew. But if you're modeling this in your home, it's not only for your kids or your nieces and nephews, it's for their friends. It's for your friends' friends when you have a dinner party and they see you treat each other differently. The next thing that you can do is teach children about their own space, their boundaries, and their body autonomy. What I mean by that is, well, certainly in the Midwest where I grew up, if you go visit family members and aunt and uncle want to give you a hug or a kiss or squish your cheeks or have you sit on your lap and the little kid doesn't want to, what's the parent do? Anybody familiar with the Midwest? Is it just a Midwest thing? No? Like, don't be rude. Go sit on their lap. Don't be rude. Give them a kiss, right? The kid gets scolded. When in fact, it should be the adult that's scolded, right? We used to teach that the adult should say, can I hug you? Can I hold you? Will you sit on my lap? But here's the problem with that. The child's default is yes. Our inerrant default by brain, we're programmed to connect. So if you ask me for something, I'm going to say yes, even if it makes me uncomfortable. So the correct question is, would you like a hug? Would you like to sit on my lap? Would you like me to hold your hand? And with a child who's equipped to know it's fine to say no. That's what I mean by body autonomy. That needs to be normalized. That is what's normal. It's okay to not want to be touched. I've been married for 27 years. Gosh, my husband, we've been up and down and through stuff. Marriage is not for the faint-hearted, and it is wild and glorious. I'm desperately in love with my husband, and yet there's days that I'm a touch-me-not. Like, ugh. And he picks up on my clues. He knows after all these years, and as safe and trustworthy as he is, there's still times that I'm haunted. Like I feel like, no, I don't have any skin on. Like, no, you can't touch me there. And he's able to respect that space without being hurt, like it's him, like he doesn't take it personally. He offers me safety. Number 4, be aware of what's happening in your community. And I loved the introduction about the different sides of the street, right? You got the wealthy side of the town and then where all these bad things are happening. But what a lot of people are not aware of is the fastest growing trend right now in trafficking is happening in suburban schools. And guess who the perpetrators are? It's high school girls. High school girls, the cool girls, the popular girls in the upper middle class neighborhoods on the good side of town, the it girls. They see the girls in middle school, the freshmen, the sophomores, the underclassmen who want to be part of the group. They identify them, they groom them, they invite them to parties, they spoil them with things, they supply them with drugs or alcohol, some sort of intoxicant. When the child is under the influence, they take sexually explicit photos. They use those photos then to force her or him into sexual exploitation. That is the fastest growing trend in the US right now. Right here in Colorado. We tend to think it's only men are the bad guys. We kind of have that default right now in our culture and society. But 42% of the traffickers are actually women. Now the buyers, the perpetrators, paying for sex are men overwhelmingly 99% plus are men, but the traffickers are a trusted person, and 42% of them are women. The fifth thing that we can do to fight trafficking is to use your voice. Unlike my pediatrician, my grandmother, my mother, who actually, she was also assaulted several times by my grandfather, but she never spoke up. My school teacher. If you have the courage to show up and be fully present, you'll be aware of people in your circle that are not okay. It may not be trafficking. It may be domestic violence. It may be depression. It may be suicidal ideation. It may be self-harm. It may be anxiety. It may be being laid off from work. It could be marriage problems. It could be any number of things. But if you are fully present and courageously loving, willing to enter in and ask hard questions, use your voice, then you will intervene and curb this cultural crisis. Human trafficking is always an exploitation of vulnerability. That's what it is. And there are vulnerabilities all around us. And you don't have to know like the 10 points to, is she being coerced or not? And did I get the license plate or not? You have to not go through your day on autopilot. You have to be willing to ask, hey, are you okay? Is there anything you need? Period. It's that simple. We've far overcomplicated the issue. And obviously there's nuances for social workers, for law enforcement, how they intervene is different. But it's not different in how you would intervene with a nephew or a niece, right? If we're talking about community engagement, this is how the community engages, by showing up. So there's a story that's told of a little tribe of baby mice, little pinkies, just a day or two old, tumbling and playing and building and running in their nest. And they're having the time of their life. And suddenly a shadow kind of overcasts the nest. And they stop what they are doing. Their little whiskers flutter. They start looking around. Their vision is all blurry. They can't see well yet, but there's a shadow. They hear this strange vibrating sound. And the mother mouse notices there's a cat. There's a cat crouching nearby, getting ready to consume a delicious lunch of baby mice. Now, the mother mouse, she's way outweighed. She doesn't know how to get all of her babies away from this predator that's about ready to pounce, right? So what's the mother mouse do in this story? My funny little allegory. The mother mouse takes a deep breath. She pounces right in front of her nest. She stands up on her hind legs, and with all the fierceness in her tiny little body, from her little skinny tail to her waving whiskers, she starts barking at the cat. And the cat is so startled by this vicious sound coming from the tiny snack that it jumps back, arches its back, and flees. The lesson is, as silly as it is, never underestimate the power of your voice. Do the thing. Speak up. When you see it, say something. When you see somebody's hurting, meet them where they're hurting. Because trafficking is an exploitation of vulnerability. Hurting people hurt people. Hurting people are vulnerable to somebody that's going to meet that need in an unhealthy way. Never underestimate the power of your voice. Because you, brave ones, are the candlelight at the table where healing sits and feasts. It's on all of us. We need experts. We need the law enforcement. We need the social workers. We need the case managers. We need all of us. Every single one of us. And you are the light. So just as a gift to you, if you have any children in your life, you can scan this QR code. This is a free ebook that I put together called What to Do When a Band-Aid Won't Work. And it is 8 weeks of conversation starters and resilience activities that strengthen your family relationships. So I'll stop right here. If you open your camera, if you want it, you can scan that QR code. For people who aren't familiar with QR codes, you tap it and it will take you to a link, which is an ebook. And that's just my free gift for you tonight, to help empower you to strengthen your family relationships. And if you don't have kids at home, you can certainly pass it on to somebody that does. Feel free to share that. Did it not work? Oh, some people got it. Did some people get it? Some people got it. Some people didn't. I'll get it to you, Donna. If it.
Oh,
You can download it. You should be able to. Yes, no? I've got another one coming up. If anybody wants it and has trouble getting it, then I will get it to you. So triumphant joy, this is what I am all about. My whole life purpose is to make everything around me beautiful. You know, I already shared just a bit of the trauma that I have been through, but my life now is not that. You guys, I wake up on a regular basis and my face is tired from smiling so much in my sleep. Like, who does that? Like, have you been to a party or a family gathering? Maybe not a family gathering, a party where your face hurts because you smiled so much? I wake up like that regularly. Triumphant joy, not just kind of joy, but triumphant joy. So what I do is I empower those who feel busted up, broken, or burned out to transform their trauma into triumphant joy so that they can wake up and jump into each day filled with hope and expectation. And I'm passionate about that because that's what my life is. I know how to do that. I have the map for that. And some of the clients that I've served in the last 3 years, military clients, I've served a retired brigadier general, ex-Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, a CIA operative. I work with first responders, both law enforcement, fire, nurses. I work with survivors, not only of human trafficking, but domestic violence, child sex abuse, rape, and even survivors of cancer. I work with mamas, stay-at-home moms, homeschool moms, homeless moms, and even empty nesters finding their way again. I work with social workers, foster parents, and my clients right now span 9 countries. So and there's no pressure to this, but if you're interested in a free discovery session, exploring triumphant joy with me, then I do that for free. And you can book a session with that QR code. And it's not a sales pitch. It is 60 minutes of me with you exploring what a life of joy looks like. And with that, we are at the end and I'm open for questions. So the question was, if the Zoom audience did not hear, how do I feel about the current laws or the laws that have been changed around prostitution being reduced to petty offenses, so there's less compulsion for them to be investigated or prosecuted. And I have super strong opinions about that. It's one of the things that on the U.S. Advisory Council, actually, we're advocating pretty strongly against. Personally, I advocate for more of the Nordic model, which criminalizes the buyer and the pimp, the brothel owner, the pimp, and the buyer, but does not criminalize the person that is being prostituted. And so when the laws were up for discussion, I have been advocating very strongly against them. I think it is, I think that when a crime is committed, there are catastrophic consequences. And with the laws that currently exist, the only one that bears the consequences is the person being victimized. And with appropriate, strong laws and active investigation and criminalizing the perpetrators of violence, the perpetrators of exploitation, it reduces, they pay the penalty, they pay the consequences instead of the person being exploited. So that's my opinion about that. That's a great question. And I'm going to go back to our mama mouse, and that is use your voice as loud and as often as you can. There's a lot of players at play. There's a lot of people that profit off of sexual exploitation, off of trafficking, both labor and sexual exploitation. And there's a big growing movement, the pro-sex work lobby, that is really aggressively pushing for the full decriminalization across the board of prostitution, which includes brothel owners and pimps and buyers. And they make compelling humanitarian arguments on behalf of protecting the prostituted person. However, it doesn't actually, in all the places it's been tried, it's been proven statistically to not protect the exploited people. And so it's a David and Goliath situation. It's a tiny mama mouse versus the cat. We have to be aware of what our laws are, and we have to just keep pounding on the door saying this is not okay. We won't stand for that. And I think, and this is just my personal opinion because you asked, Miss Lisa, is I think we should advocate for representatives in the legislature, in Congress, at a local level, state and federal, that represent views based on justice. And I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, if you care about justice, you should investigate candidates that care about justice and are going to move that forward. Okay, so two things. First, to preface this, I know this is being recorded. This is very important. I am not here speaking for the advisory council. I am a member of the council, but I am not allowed to speak for the council at large unless we drill down the talking points and all vote on it. And that's a great thing. I love that position. I honor the rest of my council members. That being said, again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. My personal wins are that I will go toe to toe with DOJ and argue all day long that this is unjust and this is not okay. And the congressional mandate is they have to listen. Now, they don't necessarily change their policy. Things look worse now than they did a year ago. But I've been put in this position, I believe, by God for such a time as this, to stand there and make the noise and demand justice and argue this is not okay, this is not okay. We're getting ready to release our 2022 report. It's in its final editing stages, and we're tackling some of those questions head on, and it'll go to all the Congress people, all the branches of government. A lot of NGOs access it for best practices and policies. So my job is to keep proclaiming justice and truth, and the outcome isn't up to me. I'm not, like, that's above my pay grade. I do my thing and keep doing my thing. for the people on Zoom, Miss Wendy was talking about her desire to see people advocate for survivors in the courtroom when they're in the midst of trial, and to have access to the trial when it's going on or knowledge of it. And I would agree with that. Two things. I think in most of the cases, trafficking survivors have a victim advocate, right? Much like comes through Tessa a lot of times, or other partners of law enforcement. So they have a victim advocate, but their hands are tied to a large degree of how they intervene. So that's one issue, is better parameters for how they can support the person that they're advocating for. The other thing that I've been advocating for, of working with some people that are developing a model for prosecuting trafficking cases absent the victim. So the detectives investigating it begin investigating it as if they're walking into a homicide. If you have a homicide, the homicide victim does not testify. Their credibility is not in question. They've been dead. Like they are not an active participant in the case. But sexual assault and trafficking, unfortunately, require the victim to show up, and their credibility is undermined. And so I've been working with some really fierce and wonderful law enforcement guys who are developing the best practices, if you will, or strategies they come onto the scene, maybe a young person, girl, boy, is being exploited, being prostituted. They get access to her phone, and from that, they build the whole case of how she was forced and coerced and exploited. And she gets put in touch with survivor services, supportive care, and they prosecute the case, and they've successfully prosecuted a handful, successfully prosecute the case absent any testimony from the witness, from the person exploited. So I think that's a really great model to move towards. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Shepherd. And that's part of the reason I wake up and my face hurts. Actually, this last year, we had a program participant graduate law school and pass her bar exam. And we had 2 get their master's degree in social work. We have another candidate who is starting her master's in social work in August. So those are things that are super exciting and worth celebrating. Whenever I get to watch a person and walk beside a person that has endured unthinkable and unimaginable things, and I see them wake up to the fact that they have a purpose, that they aren't defined by their past, that they aren't defined by their trauma, but they're equipped by it to go out and make an exponential impact, then I get goosebumps. So there's lots of good news. The work I do is hard. I work with survivors every day. I hear the worst of the worst. I've lived the worst of the worst. And yet the other side, the rising, to go on and be culture changers, is glory and joy.
I want to thank you so much for tonight. It's very enlightening, and to hear parts of your story. I especially like how you talk about coming to the other side and giving hope to people who stay in their trauma and can't see the other side and how to get past it. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. We'll see you at August meeting. And hopefully a lot of you I'll see the week after that. So have a good evening.